I'm Tim Tyler, and today I'll be discussing my take on the singularity. I've noticed that a number of people have adopted the habit of referring to the imminent rise of machine intelligence as the singularity. The use of this terminology appears to have begun with a science fiction writer, but has subsequently spread out into the wider community, and now there is a Singularity Institute, a Singularity University, Singularity Conferences, a Singularity Movie, and a Singularity Book. I see a problem with all this. The problem is that I think the terminology is ridiculous. There is no precedent for using such a term to describe historical events. The term is overloaded with multiple contradictory meanings, and none of them make much sense. Historians tend to use the term revolution to refer to radical changes in human history. So we have the agricultural revolution, the industrial revolution, the information revolution, and so on. In the future, we may see an intelligence revolution, and probably a nanotechnology revolution not long afterwards. That kind of terminology is simple, obvious, and consistent with existing history. The chance of any credible future historian ever referring to the events in question as the technological singularity seems slim. So, what is the case for the singularity terminology? As far as I can see, there isn't any serious scientific case. This is more something that has arisen out of science fiction. The term singularity comes from mathematics, where it refers to a discontinuity, a point where strange or discontinuous behaviour arises. A classical example is division by zero, which leads not to another value, but to infinity. Some proponents have concluded that the rate of progress will actually do something like that. Here is an example of that from one of the singularity advocates. While machines will construct smarter machines, the proposed timescale here seems rather over-optimistic. One problem is with the third of the three steps. Progress does not just depend on thinking. It also depends on the ability to sense and modify the world in order to perform experiments, and robot capabilities are not doubling every 2 years. Another problem lies with the assumption that the current growth does not depend on contributions of computers to the design of computers in any significant way. In fact, designing and optimizing integrated circuits is an incredibly compute-intensive task, and the involvement of computers in the process is already enormous. Machines don't yet do everything, but already they do a lot, and their capabilities matter. However fast progress goes, it won't ever become infinitely fast. What will happen is that we'll run into physical limits first of all, so the hypothesized singularity will never actually be reached. The singularity term has subsequently been liberally redefined and reused. This is not necessarily bad, but it does present critics with something of a moving target. It's hard to be critical when you don't know what somebody is talking about. Here is Eliezer Yudkowsky describing some of the various interpretations of the idea that have been proposed.
There's three major schools of thought that have become associated with the word. One that you've all heard of already, I'm sure, is Ray Kurzweil's accelerating change. There's also Werner Vinge's event horizon and I.J. Good's intelligence explosion.
One idea is that the singularity represents a kind of prediction horizon. Here is Ray Kurzweil on that topic.
By 2045, we'll have expanded the intelligence of our human-machine civilization a billion-fold. That will be a singularity. And we borrowed this metaphor from physics to talk about an event horizon that's hard to see beyond.
The problems here are that different things are unpredictable on different time scales, ranging from the stock market, which is unpredictable on the scale of a few days, to the orbits of the planets, which are highly predictable over a period of thousands of years. Also, far future details have always been unpredictable, and probably will be challenging to predict for a long time to come. So, this prediction horizon seems to recede as we approach it, and therefore it does not correspond to any particular future event. Another problem with the idea of a prediction horizon is that it seems more closely analogous to an event horizon than to a singularity, and therefore seems like poor justification for using the latter term. Another idea is that our model of the future will break down. Humans predict the future using many different kinds of models, and not very many of those models seem likely to be broken by the advent of highly intelligent machines. So, is such an event likely to happen? Here is Robin Hanson on the issue.
Don't you think that when these first uploads are created and the bonds of the human body have finally escaped, that's sort of it, that's game over. Concepts of economy, social organisation, political organisation, it's all out the window, and it's a completely different future to anything we're really capable of understanding today.
Most definitely not. So I think this is a mental block that has stopped a lot of people from thinking about this sort of thing.
My perspective is that our ability to predict the future appears to be improving over time. As our ability to collect data improves, our models improve, and we develop bigger computers. This effect seems to be more significant than the fact that some of the things that are being modelled are themselves growing more complex. This effect will tend to push the point which we can't predict beyond farther out as time passes, and so it will never arrive. Our models of the future will not break down, rather they will get better and better. It is much the same with physics. In physics, the term singularity is used to describe the way that the laws of physics, as they were understood in the 1950s, failed with a kind of division by zero when applied to black holes. However, rather obviously, this was a flaw in those theories and not a real physical phenomenon. The modern theories that unite relativity with quantum physics do not have such singularities. Particular thinkers may have found that their brain melts down when contemplating these far future events, but that is best seen as a property of their brains and not the future events themselves. If your model breaks, then that's a problem with your model and not with some kind of an event in the far future. What about the idea that exponential growth would lead to rapid technological change? Here is Terence McKenna describing that.
A day will come when we will experience more change in an hour than we have experienced in the past 20, 30,000 years. A situation like that is unimaginable, so we call it a singularity, a place where the normal rules of modeling break down.
What about the idea that there will be an intelligence explosion and that self-improving systems will rapidly explode and take over the world? I think that the intelligence explosion concept is a reasonable one, and note that it already has a perfectly good name. However, if you look at the effect, it is one which is already going on. Machines are already dramatically augmenting human intelligence, and have been doing so for some time. Most machine code in the world is now written by computers. Much of the world's refactoring is also done by computers. Companies are self-improving intelligent systems. The intelligent explosion is not really an event which is localized in the future, but it is much more spread out, and we can clearly see the beginnings of it happening now. I've made another video about this entitled The Intelligence Explosion is Happening Now. The proposed singular aspect apparently involves the intelligence of computers suddenly reaching human level and then taking over from there. The problem here is that there is no such thing as human-level intelligence. Workers have varying levels of intelligence required for their jobs, and consequently automation takes over their jobs gradually. Already we have automated bank tellers, checkout assistants, cleaners, factory workers, telephone operators, and so on. In the job market, machines will gradually catch up with humans, not overtake them suddenly. Functionally, human intelligence goes from Einstein right down to heavily disabled individuals that are practically comatose. The distribution of human intelligence forms a bell-shaped curve, not a sharp spike, and in the job market, which is where humans and machines compete, the spread of intelligence required to perform tasks is even broader. Many humans are currently doing jobs that could be being done with much less intelligent machines. Robin Hanson has even tried rebranding the agricultural revolution and the industrial revolution as singularities in a recent article. There, he wrote, "Whatever the Industrial Revolution was, clearly it was an event worthy of the name singularity." I disagree with this. I think calling the Industrial Revolution a singularity represents a pandering to pseudoscience. I see the same problem as with other usages of the term. The word is simply inaccurate and inappropriate. Revolution is a much better established term. If the events are sufficiently dramatic, then we have precedent for using the term takeover, and there are various other terms that would fall within existing scientific traditions. I think the best perspective on the singularity phenomenon is that it is not science, but marketing. Usually, the singularity folk have something to sell. Whether it is that the future is going to be bad and that we have to work to stop it, or that the future is going to be great and that we should unite to make it happen more quickly, or that the future is going to be weird and that you need assistance in order to understand it, there is usually something that we need in order to contribute to or invest in. I find it all rather nauseating. I would prefer it if people would use established, sensible, scientific terminology instead of nonsensical, fantastical concepts derived from science fiction. Whenever I hear people talking about the singularity, I wonder if they know what they are talking about. Whenever I see institutions associating themselves with the singularity, my assessment of their credibility plummets. The term makes me wonder what people are selling. I don't mind marketing, but here we are mostly talking about ideas that are either confused, confusing, misleading, wrong, or just have nothing to do with the term being used. The singularity is pseudoscientific, mystical-sounding mumbo-jumbo. My counsel for the singularity enthusiasts is to reconsider your position. Scientifically speaking, your terminology sucks. It is not cool or sexy, it is mostly just bad marketing masquerading as science. For the sake of your credibility, my recommendation is to drop it.